How can this bye week help Kansas? And we're also going to get into, with 9 remaining games, the 9 most important Jayhawks for the rest of the way of the 2025 season.
You are Locked On Jayhawks, your daily podcast on the Kansas Jayhawks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on? Derek Johnson here. This is Locked On Jayhawks, and thanks for making it your first listen every day. Thank you so much to the everydayers catching each and every episode of the show. We are free and available anywhere you get your podcast, including on YouTube, where you can like and subscribe. And on today's edition of LOJ, we're talking KU football off the bye week. How can this week off help KU prepare for the rest of the season? With 9 remaining games, we're also going to break down the 9 most important Jayhawks for the rest of the football season for KU. Today's episode of the show is brought to you by Mazda. Just like there's more to every player and play, more dedication, more attention to detail, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Stay tuned later in the episode for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. Mazda, move and be moved. So it's a bye week for Kansas this week as they get ready for the start of Big 12 play. Obviously, they get the extra bye week afforded to them, not playing in week 0, and I think that presents an opportunity for Kansas in a very positive way. And I think that's where the first part of the importance of the bye week comes in. Always it's going to be, number one, rest and relaxation, right? They're still practicing. They're still, studying, preparing for the other team, but it's an opportunity to not have a game and get guys who are banged up a little more fresh, a little healthier. At this point in the season, everybody's at least got a little something. You're at least a little sore, maybe got a couple bruises here or there. Good to get fresh. But this is especially true for the guys who it has caused them to miss time or be limited or maybe not play to the maximum ability that they have by playing through injury. Now, some of those guys we never hear about. Some of them we don't hear about till the end of the season. Other times we just never hear about it. They're like, a guy was playing through an injury that we just never knew about, and he was just being really tough about it. There are certain guys we know about, though, like Cam Pickett got hurt and was limited in the Wagner game. He was limited in the Missouri game. Not the same guy and as explosive as we saw in that first game against Fresno State. Can you get him back to being fully healthy? Because that would just it takes this KU offense to another level. The more, targets and receivers who can cause problems for defense that are out there at once. And if you have that going at the same time we saw the big game from Emmanuel Henderson against Wagner. We saw the big game from Cam Pickett against Fresno State. We saw a big catch against Missouri by Levi Wentz. We haven't really gotten to see Bryson Canty yet, but the idea of him is another really productive receiver for KU. If you can get all these guys healthy and on the field at once, it'll start to present some problems for the opposition, but you got to get them healthy first. You think of Gage Keys, who went through warmups in the Missouri game and is somebody who can provide a little pass rush juice for that KU defensive tackle room, a room that's already been good, and Keys is going to only add more to it. He's got to play a snap so far this season, but that's just going to add even more depth, and that'll make the starters, the top guys, better too, right? Because if he's able to shave off, some snaps here or there, that'll keep their legs fresher over the course of the season. We also got to see Jason Gilliam for just 10 snaps against Missouri, but he was graded a 78 on Pro Football Focus. He had 5 tackles with 0 missed tackles in a game. KU was missing a lot of tackles against the Tigers. Real opportunity for Jason Gilliam to add to this linebacking core even more to what it already is. And can he be fully healthy? And then, of course, Bangally Kamara. That's the big one. Bangally Kamara is the poster child for you need him healthy for the rest of the way. And maybe with the injury he suffered, I don't know what it exactly is. Obviously, it was very cryptic when it happened. That made it seem it was pretty bad. But obviously, the fact he came back for the Missouri game is a good sign. That said, if it's an injury that was supposed to be pretty bad and he came back that early, does that tell you that even after a bye week, it's not going to get fully healed after 1 week? Can't hurt, though, having this extra week if you're Bangally Kamara. And we know he can be an absolute stud for this team, for this defense, for the linebacking core. So, getting him another week. And then, like I said, there's other players that are playing through stuff that we probably just don't know about. And so this week is probably good for them as well. I would also say the continuation of the quarterback 2 battle, that's probably important in the bye week. Maybe it's an opportunity to get some extra reps to some of those guys, so that can be important. And that goes for all positions where the young players are getting an opportunity in a week like this. I think that can be helpful. I think figuring out I guess maybe not figuring out is the way I want to put it, but maybe more solidifying what you want to do on the offensive line, because it does feel like, I don't know, it just seems like to a certain extent, Kansas is still a okay, do we go with this guy at this spot? Do we go with this guy at this spot? It still feels like you're still kind of slowly figuring it out. And so you look at the Missouri game, for instance, and you have Calvin Clements register all 50 snaps at left tackle, Kobe Baines register all 50 at right guard, and Bryce Foster register all 50 at center. But those were the three guys we were expecting to be anchored in at those positions all the way through. Still, though, in that Missouri game, Enrique Cruz is playing 39 snaps, and you're giving away 12 to Nolan Gorsica. Amir Herring is playing 26 snaps. Tavaki Tuiko-Lovato is playing 24. Now, if you're looking at those snap counts, that would definitely tell you that Enrique Cruz has things unlock a little bit more, over Nolan Gorsica, though Gorsica's been solid for Kansas when he's come in at different moments. The Tavaki Tuiko-Lovato thing is interesting because the fact that he starts to creep up, and if you look at his snap counts from week to week, 15 in week 1, 35 in week 2, which that's an FCS game, and then 24 against Missouri. If we're just comparing the FBS games, you go from 15 against Fresno to 24 against Missouri, and you take the flip side of that and you start looking at Amir Herring's snap counts in those two FBS games, 45 snaps against Fresno, 42 against Wagner, then down to 26 against Missouri. Does that tell us that Tavaki Tuiko-Lovato is making inroads? Would it be surprising if Tuiko-Lovato ends up being the starter in the next game against West Virginia? I don't necessarily think it would, but you are getting to a point, and we know Kansas in the past has used basically 6 offensive linemen where they're rotating one guy through. And maybe this year it just is different. Maybe you do just end up playing, 7 guys each and every game essentially. But I would like to think Kansas would want to get it to 6. And so it'll be very interesting to see if they start to decide, hey, okay, we've seen our non-con play. We have the bye week now. We've now decided this is going to be our 5 or our 6. And obviously you need to get better as a run blocking, though I will say some of those stats out there. Game on paper has Kansas in the 60th percentile for offensive line rush yards. Pick Six Advanced Stats has them 15th in the country in offensive line rush yards. So actually has them okay there. PFF has them in the top 25 of the country in run blocking grade, though it has them much lower in pass blocking grade. So it is something where, they've still been fine. This isn't, they haven't reverted to the 2020 offensive line or, the pre-Lance Leipold offensive lines. But certainly you want to start nailing that down as this unit. This is a unit that you look at and say, okay, I look at the DB room and I look at the offensive line room and say, both of those rooms can get better as the season goes on because these guys are going to be meshing together. In the DB room's case, just looking for more experience and stuff like that. I mentioned this guy's name earlier, something else you can do in the bye week as part of the injuries, but I did want to focus on it a little bit more just individually. And I wanted to talk more about Bryson Canty. I think it is so important for KU to get Bryson Canty up to speed. And we haven't really seen Bryson Canty. I'm trying to think. He had a target. I think it was on that pass from Cole Ballard in the Wagner game, but I don't remember there being any other targets in there. He played 3 snaps against Missouri. He played 16 against Wagner and 4 against Fresno State. This was a guy who coming in had an 84.5 PFF grade at Columbia a season ago. He was an all Ivy League player, a lot of production in his time at the Ivy League, and yes, that is an adjustment to go up, but I saw there's a receiver who was really good at Harvard, Cooper Barkate, who transferred to Duke, and against Illinois he has 4 catches for 80 yards, and one of their other games he had 5 catches for 100. So point being, it can be done, and I think Bryson Canty, if the fall camps injury stuff didn't happen and he had the full fall camp and he had spring ball some of these, that's the other thing. He was also behind the 8 ball by not having that. If he can get caught up, I think he can make an impact. It's just a matter of will he be able to. And this is that first pain point where you would say he has the opportunity to do just that. But you look at, what made Bryson Canty good. What areas did he excel at over the field? So he's a bigger receiver, 6'2", and that can be really helpful for an offense, just having that bigger bodied receiver. He was really good on deep balls at Columbia. He caught 48% of deep balls targeted his way, which is a very good number. He had a 99.7 receiving grade on deep balls last season at Columbia. Also over the middle of the field, he ended up with a 93.1 PFF grade over that area. And so you're looking at that being a positive for him. You're also, if you're looking for where he excelled, it's over the middle of the field. He had 16 catches between 10 to 20 yards over the middle of the field. That is his biggest zone where he caught the most passes over the middle of the field between 10 to 20 yards. We've talked a lot about Jalon Daniels and this offense improving a ton from last year in those specific areas, but Canty would add even more in a real way for KU. So can you get him up to speed? And then, extra scouting on West Virginia, extra self-scouting so you're not becoming too predictable and you're, working on your weaknesses too. There is a lot KU can get done with the bye week. And the beauty of week 0, you're going to get an extra one, which I guess is this one here for KU headed into the game with West Virginia in Lawrence. All right, 9 games left for KU. Who are the 9 most important players for KU football to have, a season that they want to be competing for the Big 12 title? Who are those players? That next. This episode of Locked On Jayhawks is brought to you by Mazda's Moving the Game Forward. For those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. There are moments that do more than put points on the board. They move crowds, move culture, and they keep moving the game forward. This week's moment that moved the game forward to me, I know Kansas lost the game, but it is the drive by Jalon Daniels, the 92-yard touchdown drive. Kansas down 28-24 to Missouri, goes down, puts them up 31-28. And they end up losing the game, but it was good to see that moxie, that poise by Jalon Daniels to lead that drive. He had a couple big-time strikes, big-time throws in there. And one of the things that I loved about the drive, too, he missed a little bit. Now, maybe you could say Daniel Hishaw could have come down with it. He was wide open on like a wheel route. It was thrown a bit, out of stride for him. It would have been a tough catch. Again, I'm sure Hishaw would be like, I wish I would have had that, but also probably not the most accurate throw from Jalon Daniels. But what I love about that, no quarterback. Patrick Mahomes misses guys. You're going to miss guys from time to time. How do you respond from that? And Jalon Daniels responded. They went down and scored a touchdown. That was awesome to see and makes me feel good about where he's at for the rest of the season. When you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved with Mazda. Thanks for joining us on Locked On Jayhawks, and thank you for tuning in anywhere you get your podcast or on YouTube. You can find Locked On College Football for your second listen every day. Get ready for week 3, and you can give me a follow at DJohnsonRadio or at LO_Jayhawks on Twitter. All right, so there's 9 games left for KU football. We're going to break down the 9 most important players for Kansas football over the rest of the season. This does not necessarily correlate with, this player for this specific game. It's just, 9 games left, 9 most important players. Let's start here. Number 9 is Bryce Foster. So Foster comes in. He was a second-team All-Big 12 performer. He was awesome for Kansas last year. And the Missouri game was a bit more of a struggle for Bryce Foster. He ended up with a 49 PFF grade. Only a 59, though, against Wagner. Only a 62 against Fresno State. And I can't help but wonder, remember, Bryce Foster had that injury that prevented him from going down to Big 12 Media Days. And I don't know exactly how much it dipped into fall camp. Did he miss a day? Did he miss a week? Did he miss nothing? But it certainly at least had some sort of impact on his offseason regimen. And I can't help but wonder if he's playing through a little bit of pain right now, playing through a little bit of injury in some way. So hopefully this bye week helps him in that way. But point being, when you look at the KU offensive line, we talked about it earlier, there are actually some stats that are pretty pleasant for the KU offensive line. There's others that aren't as good. But I think overall, if you were to say the KU offensive line has been kind of middle of the pack among Power 4 schools so far, that'd be understandable. But here's where it really comes into play for me. We're talking about KU has questions about, okay, who's their right tackle, right? Is it Nolan Gorsuch or is it Enrique Cruz? Well, Gorsuch has an 83 PFF grade right now. Now, if we just want to look at his games against Power 4 or FBS opponents, he had a 63.9 against both Fresno State and Missouri. But, a 64 grade for your backup right tackle in those 2 games, that's not bad at all, right? And then we're looking at Enrique Cruz, who has a ton of games played between his time now at Kansas and Syracuse. He had a basically on average 62, 61 PFF grade between Fresno and Missouri. He has a 68 overall in the season. He's been solid. He's been fine. I'm sure there's been, moments here or there, but overall. And then again, with Tavaki Tuigo-Lovato, he right now has a 71 grade on PFF. When you look at Amir Herring, he's somebody who struggled a bit in that first game, though the second edits of the PFF grades liked it a little bit more, and then was good against the Wagner game, and it was kind of up and down then in the Michigan game or the Missouri game. But point being, you have these spots that you have as more question spots, but they've actually been maybe a little bit better than you would think. And that brings me to Foster, where it's like, if Foster, you get the level of play you got last year, and these other spots are actually maybe a little better than you were hoping, what does it mean this offensive line can become for KU? So that's where I think Foster comes into play in a very important way. Number 8 is Emmanuel Henderson for me. So Henderson had a really hot start in the Fresno State game, and then it became kind of the Cam Pickett show. And then in week 2, it was the Emmanuel Henderson show against Wagner, where he was doing a little bit of everything. Against Missouri, a little more quiet of a game. Obviously, the drop is the one that everybody thinks back to, which was just kind of unfortunate. But Kansas is going to keep going back to him in big moments because he is as talented of a player as Kansas has on this team. He's as fast as a player as Kansas has on this team. He's still going to have many more opportunities to make big moments and make big plays for Kansas. They're going to keep going back to him. And when you look at, like even as Cam Pickett is really good with the ball in his hands, when you get the ball in his hands, there's a difference between that and somebody who can blow the lid off the top of the defense. And that can be so important for how a team defends you. And having that with Emmanuel Henderson, Levi Wentz can do it in a different way, more of like a possession way, but that really helps open up everything for KU as an offense. So he's going to be really important the rest of the way. Number 7 is Cam Pickett. I do think if everybody's healthy, I think Pickett will be the leading receiver the rest. Again, if you're saying everybody's healthy, that would be the case. And we saw that a little bit in the Fresno State game. I think he's going to be the trusted, dependent target. He's going to be the guy you get the ball in his hands a good amount of time if he is healthy. So it's going to be important to get him healthy. But also, when you look at Kansas, still, I like some of these receivers. It's still not a position group, though, where Kansas is Ohio State out there, where Kansas is, got, their fourth string is going to be a first-round pick one day. Like, that's not the case. So you are relying on these guys in a real way. And so I have Cam Pickett in at number 7. And then number 6 for me is Lyric Rawls. I thought about picking one of the young Kansas defensive backs, but the problem is you could pick like any of them, right? The reason I went Lyric Rawls, and he's off to a good start this season, for what it's worth. Like Rawls he's done a really good job like getting up and run support so far. He's got a 73 PFF grade, including a 77 coverage grade. He's been a really nice transfer portal addition for KU out of Oklahoma State. The young defensive backs are going to take some time. They're going to have some really good moments. They're going to make some really good plays because they're talented. But they're also going to have some moments like the Missouri game where, you give up some key plays in coverage. And that's where Rawls comes into play, not just because it's important how he performs, but because he's the veteran. He's a leader back there. And it's almost like that Rawls becomes the mentor. Rawls becomes the guy that you're looking to mentor these young DBs in a way that, you have so many new players and so many young players in that secondary that Rawls, and that's a tough thing to do, transferring in from another program and then having to do that. But that's where I think Rawls is just as important as his play on the field, is mentoring this young group of DBs around him because it is talented. And if you can mix that talent with that mentorship and with more game experience as the season goes on, I think that KU defensive back room, the KU secondary is going to get better and better each and every week throughout the season. But there's going to be some ups and downs, right? There's going to be some big plays that you give up here and there. Can Rawls help kind of tie that in and make it as clean of an operation as possible? I think he becomes very important for this KU defense. All right, who are the top 5? We'll get to that next. This is Locked On Jayhawks. Today's episode of Locked On Jayhawks is brought to you by Drip Drop. If you're trying to stay on top of your routine, whether that's workouts, long days on campus, or staying focused through back-to-back classes, hydration is where it all starts. And that's where Drip Drop comes in. Drip Drop is doctor-developed, scientifically proven for fast hydration. Uses the perfect balance of sodium electrolytes and glucose to help your body absorb fluids quickly, delivering 3 times the electrolytes and half the sugar of a leading sports drink. I would say that I like the variety pack. I like to switch it up. I go with the grape sometimes. Other times I'm going with fruit punch. But every flavor I've had, I've enjoyed, and it's been something that has made me, feel more energized or, hydrated throughout the day. So right now, Drip Drop's offering Locked On listeners 20% off your first order. Just head to dripdrop.com. Use promo code LOCKEDONCollege. That is dripdrop.com, promo code LOCKEDONCollege for 20% off. Stock up now before the heat hits hard. Today's episode of the show is brought to you by DoorDash. It's almost the weekend, and basically is time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered. Powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash streaks, saving more every time you order. These players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down. For the Jayhawks this week, we're going to go with Leroy Harris, who delivered in a big way on the defensive end. He ended up with 4 pressures. He ended up with 2 sacks. This is a kid who transferred in from UT Chattanooga after he was a freshman there. Now you're looking at a year 2 player coming over to Kansas, and he has been arguably their best defensive end so far. He's lengthy. He is awesome to watch, and what a under the radar pickup that was for KU. And it hasn't just been the 1 week thing against Missouri. He's got like really good numbers so far this year. And if you've been watching week to week, you know it's not a fluke, just that Missouri game. And so just like Leroy Harris delivered for the Jayhawks so far, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays. With DoorDash streaks, you save every Saturday you order. Stack it up all season. You can save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period through November 18th. Thanks for joining us on Locked On Jayhawks. Are finishing things up with our top 5 most important players for KU football the rest of the season. We're doing our top 9 since there's 9 games left into the top 5. Number 5 is Justice Finkley. You know, when I was doing my stock market report, I kind of mentioned that the strong side defensive end spot hasn't gotten a sack so far for KU this season, right? As many like chaotic and hectic plays as they've had mostly come from defensive tackles and Leroy Harris, and then I guess a little Dean Miller flicked in here or there. Finkley is a guy who was brought in. He's a leader of the team. I mean, dude looks as chiseled as you can imagine. He's had some good moments when he was with Texas, and he hasn't had that like breakout moment yet for KU. Right now, he's only got a 53 grade on Pro Football Focus. It was, you know, decent in the first 2 games, 69 against Fresno, 65 against Wagner, just a 40 against Missouri. And that's where, you know, you're looking for him to, okay, can you bounce back? Can you be a game changer for Kansas on that defensive line? Can you not just be a leader, but can you take it to another level? Because I think you feel like there is that known constant that KU has that good defensive tackle room. We now know what Kansas has with Leroy Harris. We know you have Dean Miller, right? Alex Bray has done some nice things early in the season. If Finkley lives up to the preseason expectations at this point, that KU defensive line is going to be pretty nasty. And so that's why I think he becomes very important the rest of the way. Bangally Kamara is the next one. Again, I could have picked a lot of the different linebackers for KU. It just feels like Trey Lathan's been such a constant that I wanted to pick Kamara because he's the one who kind of has the question mark right now just about, you know, the injury and how is that going to affect him moving forward on the season. But Kamara and Lathan bring a new level of athleticism for KU in that linebacking core. If Kamara can continue to do what he's doing, except lower those missed tackle numbers, he's got 6 missed tackles so far this season. If those go down and everything else stays the same for Kamara paired with Lathan, this is going to be a really good linebacking core. I mean, it might already be the best linebacking core of the Lance Leipold era, but it'll be talking about not just that, but also like a strength comparatively to the Big 12. And that's what Kamara brings to the table. And so he becomes number 4. I thought about making this next guy number 1 just because it comes with the position. I have Jalon Daniels in at number 3. I guess realistically, he's probably number 1 because, like I said, quarterback is the most important position that is out there. But we wanted to spice things up a little bit. So Jalon's obviously number 3. The reason that I did argue to make him not number 1 is the idea that I am at a point now where just from a level of play perspective, I'm confident in what we've seen over the last 5 games of last year and now in the first 3 games this year, including the Missouri game with Jim Zebrowski and Matt Lubick as the co-offensive coordinators. I'm confident that Jalon's going to be a good player for Kansas the rest of this season. And for that perspective, it's like, yes, the quarterback matters the most, but I'm putting my trust in Jalon to be like, okay, I think we're going to get this desired level of play. So it just becomes about, can you raise it another level? Can you go from playing really good right now to like, oh my gosh, this guy deserves to get a trip to New York or something? I don't know. Would that kind of be the case? But yeah, obviously quarterback's important. So he's number 3. Number 2 on the list is Calvin Clements. I talked earlier in the show about with Bryce Foster and how actually some of these other spots are playing pretty well for, or at least decent for KU on the offensive line. Kobe Baines has been awesome. He's the number 1 rated guard in the Big 12 to this point in the season. And so you look at Foster and Clements, who are supposed to be two of your pillars on the offensive line. If they can just get back to playing to the level you're expecting to, you're going to be cooking with something on that O-line. Right now, Clements just a 55 overall grade on PFF, and it's a little ugly in the pass block game, just a 33 pass block grade compared to 63 in run blocking, though that is mostly tanked by the Missouri game, which was given just a 10 rating there. I do think Calvin Clements is very talented. He's obviously got the body for it, and how much of that bad score and that bad game comes down to a couple plays, like there, were a couple you want to point to, but what's the overall body of work there? And you keep in mind, it does feel like we've had Calvin. I mean, this is third year in the program, but he came into this season with like 250 career snaps at Kansas. Like, this is not a player who is the most experienced player in the world. He's going to get better as the season goes on. He's going to get better with the more time he has with Kansas, but just to what level? Because Kansas has been spoiled in the last couple of years with how good their offensive tackle play has been with some dudes who are, off to the NFL after they're done with KU, and in some case getting playing time. But Clements, how quickly can you learn on the job and become a positive player for this team? That's going to be pretty critical in protecting Jalon Daniels. And then number one on this list, I have Daniel Hishaw. So going back to talking about some of the offensive line stats that they actually are on Pick 6 Advanced Stats, number 15 in the country in offensive line run push. That game on paper has him in the 60th percentile, so at least kind of above average in their offensive line rush yards. That Pro Football Focus has him in the top 25 for run blocking. Again, different story for pass blocking, but we're talking about the running game here with Daniel Hishaw. And what that tells me is that, and again, some of that is being weighted by the first two games, which KU did so well in those first two games. If you're just looking at the Missouri game, those numbers would obviously drop, and so you want to be better. But also, Kansas probably won't play another defensive line as good as Missouri, save maybe like Utah. Maybe there's another school that, I don't know, I haven't studied as much about. But, when you look at it from that perspective, like, it's up to the running backs to take advantage of this. And this is where I think you missed the vision of Devin Neal. But Daniel Hishaw is still a capable runner. And I don't think we've seen his capabilities to his fullest extent. I think Daniel Hishaw, at the height of what he can be, it should be a 1,000-yard runner behind this offensive line. And I think LaShawn Williams should be a really good complement. Maybe we start to see one of those young running backs who has that extra kind of burst and juice, get a little bit more playing time, whether it's Harry Stewart or Thurman or Thompson or something. Who knows? Maybe we do see, that happen a little bit more. But Hishaw's the guy you're looking at. He's the, 5th or 6th year player at this point. He's a senior. Last ride at KU. We've seen him have some awesome games, awesome moments, awesome runs for KU. Ball out these final 9 games. And if you do that and you feel good about the KU passing game, we just saw Kansas nearly beat Missouri on the road without any semblance of a rushing game. So what happens when they do establish the rushing game? And if they can do that, and a big reason for doing that would be Daniel Hishaw getting things into the highest gear, I think Kansas offense is going to be pretty tough to beat. All right, that'll do it for this episode of Locked On Jayhawks. You can find our show anywhere you get your podcast, including on our YouTube page where you can like and subscribe to the show. See you back on Monday after a no-game week for KU football. We'll be breaking down the West Virginia game with the week ahead and anything that happens over the weekend here with LOJ.